Good day, everyone. I'm Rosam Las Piñas. I'm the reporter of Topic 3, Q&A about everything you need to know about post-training reinforcement. In this topic, there is a lot of knowledge emerging around the topic of post-training reinforcement and why it has become a critical factor in the visible behavior change on the job application of training. To help us better understand what we can do to successfully strengthen employee training, here are a few answers for common questions. What is training reinforcement? Training reinforcement involves providing strategic content as a training follow-up, using the spacing effect to help the brain recall information and transfer it to long-term memory. Post-training reinforcement supports behavior change and on-the-job application by increasing a learner's retention of knowledge gained during training. Training reinforcement or post-training reinforcement, it is uses recruitment skill to further improve the learning retention of employees. The acquisition skills, which include short quizzes, help employees transform newly acquired knowledge into longer one. Example, this is the logos in a company, and we know that there are such companies. There are toys and t-shirts which can be a positive reinforcement and will reward individuals for their efforts and encourage them. Keep up the good work so that the employees continue to appreciate that every member of the team values the workplace. Why do I need to reinforce employee training? The object of training is for people to learn, but learning is not an event, it's a process. In an article with Training Industry, Cynthia Clay described the learning process in these 4 steps. First step is learn it. Second step, encode it. Third step, recall it. Fourth step, apply it. In learn it, you begin exposed to transfer new information. Encode it. You begin to transferring that information from short-term to long-term memory. Recall it. You're retrieving it from the short-term or long-term memory. Apply it. You firmly committing that new knowledge to long-term memory. If employee training only focuses on the first step in this process, the student needs to use information in the past days when the lack of training reinforcement, so that they do not remember what they have learned, as well as apply it to work. So why do we need to strengthen employee training? Because training and developing employees is critical to a company's future success. However, employees need to be productive, efficient, and adaptable and improve skill in many areas. Example of areas are communication, critical thinking, and also problem solving. How much do people forget after training? The research indicates that people forget approximately 50% of training within just 1 hour and 70% of 24 hours within 30 days. That amount of forgetting increases to 90%. At one time, people kept less than half of what they were presented with in an information. In one day, people forget more than 70% of what was taught in the training. And likewise on the 6th day, people also forget up to 75% of the information in the training. For example, you are assigned to the largest training program and you are in charge of your company. You did everything right so that you were able to conduct intensive exploration on your subject. You also spent a few weeks organizing it due to the signing off of your team. And you deliver a great training experience, everything turned out well, and all the training you overcome, but back in your office. Why you are happy with your achievement? An event you do not expect to enter inside your brain, and so do your students. Because your training starts to fade, and as a result, your employees quietly forget almost everything you have presented. How much that is cost if we skip training reinforcement? When your employees don't have any follow-up to training, your program is losing 50 to 90% of resources spent on learning. It's just being flushed away by the brain's memory process. Dr. Art Kohn said, indeed, although corporations spend $60 billion a year on training, this investment is like a pumping gas into a car that has a hole in the tank. All of your hard work simply drains away. In fact, even if corporations spend $60 billion a year on training, this investment is like a pumping gas into a car with a hole in the tank. All your hard work simply goes away. As example, the oil companies. Here every year they spend hundreds and billions of dollars just for the gas pump. But where does the money go? What did they do? Because the money turned out of gases is not turned out to be supported by the local gas station. Because it will benefit you financially, but even if you own stock of the oil company, most of the money you spend on the pump goes to the oil company somewhere. But of course, you have a choice when it comes to our use of oil. You will continue to pump your money into oil companies' profits, or you will invest in fuel. And you can keep your income in your pocket. How can we make sure employees will retain what they learned during training? To ensure training isn't forgotten before employees have a chance to use what they learned on the job. A boost will force the learner to recall the training and signal to the brain. So, how can we ensure that employees retain what they have learned in training? How and in what way? For example, is in simple training for an employee at the beginning of his/her career or during his/her 2-year tenure will not be reduced. But if less time elapsed between their employee training sessions, employees are more likely to remember what they learned from the training provided. Where should I start with creating training reinforcement? In order to save the time it takes to set up post-training reinforcement manually. This conundrum is investing in technology to automate the process for you. So what is conundrum? It is an intricate and difficult problem he or she faces with. While it is said that today's technology is automated and reliable enough for the minimal skill required by those who control them, on the other hand, it can simplify tasks and process quickly, but there are still some that are more complex that only fully understanding their complexity in a mass entrusted with the operations.
What kind of content should I use to reinforce training? So, an important point here is that reinforcement is not simply about studying for memorization. And the goal of training reinforcement is to extend the learning process and to provide content that allows the learner to think critically about how they'll apply the that new knowledge on the job. And for training reinforcement, to be most effective for your employees, you want to use content that tests them on what they've learned and helps the brain apply the information in new ways. There's a 5 types of post-training reinforcement. First is the multiple choice questions. And in multiple choice questions, it is a revolutionary technology that's changing how businesses and industries functions across the globe in the good way. And also, it is a free practice test that is focused to help people wanting to start their career in the machine learning industry. Next is short answer questions. So, in short answer questions, we use several every words: positive, negative, reinforcement, and punishment. So, it is in a specialized manner. So, in operant conditioning, positive and negative do not mean good and bad. And then, instead of Positive means you adding something, and negative means you talking something away. So in poll question, it is a study in which people are asked for their opinions about the subject or a person. Example is the poll was conducted to gauge consumers' attitudes, and then the poll showed that over 40% of Americans worship on a week basis. So in micro learning or videos on similar topics, it is all about the getting your e-learning is in small doses as tiny bursts of training materials that you can comprehend in short time. And micro learning is performed in short time bursts, and it also involves in simple and or narrow topics. Next is the thought questions. It is something such as a book or film is thought-provoking. It contains interesting ideas that make people think seriously. And this is an entertaining yet thought-provoking film. What are the best intervals for reinforcing training effectively? So, in this question, the intervals you choose would depend on the depth and breadth of your training content. But the point here is to interrupt the forgetting process. And a good outline to follow is sending boost 2 days after training, and then 7 days after, 14 days after, and 1 month after. So next question, you should training reinforcement question be easy or difficult to answer? So in this question, when you're sending questions to help someone recall what they learned, making it too easy is not helpful. The goal here is to force the brain to remember, even it is difficult and they answer the question incorrectly. But the correctness is not the point with training reinforcement question. If the learner does answer incorrectly, be sure to provide the correct answer right away. Question: how can we keep employees accountable with completing training reinforcement? So, no matter what type of training you're delivering, the easiest way to track completion of reinforcement question is by utilizing a post-training reinforcement platforms, and which will allow you to see when questions were sent and how they answered. Next question, how can we make sure employees are changing behaviors after they go through a course? So for example, in this is the manager involvement. So in manager involvement, it is an important aspect of making sure training sticks, and that's certainly the case here. So managers need to be aware of the training that has taken place and the expected behavior changes from the training. So, um, they can observe whether or not the training has proven effective. And then you can also include through question with your training reinforcement program, where you asked for the learners perspective on how they put the training into practice. And also this will give you well-rounded picture of your training program's outcomes. So last question is there technology available to help me automate post-training reinforcement? So, in utilizing training reinforcement technology is certainly the simplest way to ensure your training program is maximizing ROI, where whether you're looking for the full platform to customize and deliver your own post-training reinforcement. So, it also you need to a content library with this capability built in, and there are training reinforcement tools to fit your needs. And also, Booster Learn gives you the power to build a reinforcement program on how you like it. And then once your employees are enrolled, you choose when so you can choose when and what type of booster to send them. And then when employees interact with the boost, reports and dashboards will begin to populate individuals and teams analysis.